So coming in with a little bit of probably ought to acknowledge this, after whinging about plagiarism, some of these images are not mine, and they are just kind of, they're just between us, they're just between friends. What I've done really is to go back to animal ghosts, drawing on folklore, on legend, and on some more contemporary accounts as well, and ending up with some thoughts really about what are animal ghosts, and if they exist, how does that maybe change how we view ghosts or change how we view animals? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So I thought I'd start with a silly cartoon. And I've split it.
Paula, I'm not quite sure what's happened, but I'm not hearing you.
I think Paula's frozen.
That is really strange. Oh, my internet connection has gone funny.
Paula, if you turn your screen off and turn your video off, it'll give you more bandwidth for you to talk.
Okay, let's try that. Yeah, can you hear me now?
I could hear you before. It doesn't seem to have made any difference at the moment, but I think it froze for some reason, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I got a message saying your internet connection is unstable, but that suggestion to turn off the video camera hopefully will work.
Really good one. Thanks, Caroline. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's try that then.
Right, let's go from here. So, yeah, what I've done is I've split the ghost stories, and this is very much a series of stories, at least at first. First of all, ghost stories where the animal is kind of an accessory.
No, and you're gone again, Paula.
This is bizarre. Okay, let me see what we can do.
Perhaps Paula should log out and log back in again.
Paula, do you want to try that? While we're waiting, has anyone ever seen the ghost of an animal? I've seen a number of cats over my time, but not so far seen Marmalade. And if any animal ghost was going to turn up and disrupt a lecture here, you would assume it would be Marmalade, as he loved doing it in life.
Okay.
Paula, are you back?
Yeah, I don't know what that was about. It just went completely.
Cool. Okay. So once again, I need to make you you are still co-host.
Yeah. Can you still see the slides?
I can't at the moment. Hit the share screen button at the bottom.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm on the wrong thing. Yeah, the internet threw a wobbler. Let's make that.
Because we're trying to use it for purposes other than those for which it's designed. Star Trek, I believe.
Okay, that work?
Yep, we're there. Okay,
right.
Fantastic.
Let's plow on before something else goes wrong, yeah? Okay, so where were we? So different animal ghost categories, and I was going to start with a little mini story. Possibly the most ubiquitous ghost, although Anne Boleyn might have something to say about this, is Dick Turpin. He is, I think, reputed to haunt several locations, but on Hampstead Heath, He is supposedly seen to gallop up to the Spaniards' public house in Hampstead Lane in a clatter of hooves on gravel. So Dick Turpin's horse is the first horse as story accessory. Horses pop up a lot, sometimes with heads, sometimes without. But the main one now, are you going to do this? Let's see if I can move that on. This is the Norman Church at Odell in Bedfordshire, or Oddle, I don't quite sure how you pronounce it. It's an old place. Oddell is supposed to be a corruption of the Anglo-Saxon Wadehale or Woad Hill. So the name comes from the likely fact that there was an abundance of dye-bearing woad in the region. And when the Romans arrived in Britain, they loved this because you got nice indigo togas from it. So it's likely that there was a settlement around this area in very, very early on in the British history. So the Normans built the first church here, but this church dates to the 15th century. There are claw marks in the porch. You may be aware that that's the only church that has claw marks. Blytheborough also. But these paw marks, or claw marks, bear witness to a supernatural visitation some 300 years after the church was built. So we're looking at the 18th century. So the local MP and landowner, Sir Roland Alston, sold his soul to the devil in return for success in his earthly life. Now, there was a point at which the devil turned up to claim it. And but Alston thought he could outwit the devil. So he ran to the church and took refuge there because he thought the devil will never come into the church. So the devil didn't come into the church, but he shook the whole church with his hands, with his claws, leaving his mark of posterity, and it can still be seen now. So the stout walls held firm against Satan and his imps, and eventually the devil gave up. Said, okay, you win, I'm off. But Sir Roland escaped hell, but there was no way he was getting into heaven. So he's trapped in earthly limbo around the church, and his ghost is compelled to return once every century, where he rides a spectral black horse around the area. Those who had the misfortune to view this ghost said it is both marvellous and terrifying. It gallops the full, well, it circumnavigates the town, so it gallops right around all the town boundaries before galloping through the front door of his old home and then vanishing back in the tomb for another century. Interestingly, like many ghosts, he can pass through solid objects. So new houses built in the area are not a challenge to him, just passes straight through. But it doesn't say what his people sort of watching Coronation Street and eating cheese on toast say when a man on a black horse gallops through their front room. But anyway, but he seems to have avoided freaking anybody out too much. So that's one. The next one is Caversham. I just love this. This is such a silly cartoon. So there's a couple of more ghostly horses here. A ghostly horse and its headless rider clatters through the town on one particular night of the year. And it's the ghost of a royalist soldier loyal to Charles I, who gallops through Caversham while being chased by parliamentarian forces and trying to evade capture. Unfortunately, the Roundheads knew the area better than he did. They had a fair idea which way he was going to go, and they stretched a rope at about head height across the road in front of him. That thin rope, man moving at great speed, resulted in a very neat decapitation, and that was the end of that. But he still returns and gallops around from time to time. There's also a tale of a phantom coach and horses here. Now, this is really strange because there's a lot of things happening that all happen in the wrong place. So there's the Warren area of Caversham. Now, I'm not sure if I put a slide on for this. I did not, right, because I couldn't find a nice enough picture. So it's an area in Caversham which, if you look at it on the internet now, comes up as very posh, and you mainly get estate agents. It's called the Warren, and there was at one point a lot of very grand houses. By the looks of it, that's all gone now, and a lot of it's been redeveloped. But in one of the houses, a phantom coach and horses actually drove through the galleries of the house at midnight. So not even around the house, but right through the middle. And if a coach and horses indoors isn't odd enough, both the coachman and the horses are headless. The ghost is said to be related to a suicide at the house sometime before the 18th century. We don't know if the ghost still appears now the house has gone, but I haven't been able to find any recent accounts. A very similar tale is associated with Oakham Park and Oakham Castle in Devon. The story goes that the lady of the manor in the 17th century was a Lady Howard, who lived at Oakhampton Park with her fourth husband, Sir Richard Granville. She had done in the previous husbands 1, 2, and 3. And as penance for that, her ghost is doomed to drive around her former estate. So again, it depends which version of the story you believe, but kind of synthesizing it all together, I think that she goes from where her house was in Oakham Park up to the ruins of the castle, in a carriage made of human bones and ornamented with skulls. And all of the bones and skulls are taken from her victims. So it's likely that it wasn't just the 3 husbands she did in. Again, a headless coachman. This time she has a carriage dog, which is black and also headless. The locals apparently advise getting out of the area before midnight because she's going to turn up at midnight. What is really interesting with these stories is that you get the same motifs over and over again in different locations, and that you'll probably find this comes up again as we go through the talk. There's one particular one about a cow, which I'm going to talk about, which is really interesting from a purely folkloric point of view, and I'll talk about that when I get to it. Love this. This looks like a holiday postcard, and it's just so mad and over the top. So these are the wish hounds or wish towns. These may well have inspired the Hound of the Baskervilles. And they're not the only story about wild hunts and wild hounds. It's dotted around a lot in both British and Scandinavian folklore. But in Dartmoor, the wished hounds are effectively what we call the wild hunt. So a very early folklorist, the Reverend Sabine Baringgold, tells of a farmer who was riding home from Widdicombe Fair when he was passed on the road by a pack of these ghostly hounds with the dark huntsman in pursuit. So the farmer, he'd had a few, his horse was taking him home, and with a bit of Dutch courage, he thought, right, I'm going to have a bit of sport with this bloke. Whoever this huntsman is, we're going to have a laugh. So I went up to him and tried to joke with him and said, have you had good hunting? If you've got anything nice, do you want to share it? At that point, the phantom hunter threw him a bundle and rode off. When he opened it, it contained the corpse of the drunken farmer's own child. So a bit of gruesome story there. This is possibly one of the oddest animal ghosts. Not perhaps as good a picture as I would have liked, but that is a ghost elephant. And I'm going to tell you about 4 of them. So Martin Hoe in Devon, another evil landowner, they pop up a lot. There's a lot about people who are absolutely vile in real life or in life, getting their comeuppance in the afterlife and often ending up in this limbo where they're doomed to drive around till Judgment Day. And that's kind of what happened to Sir Robert Chichester. He was killed while trying to rob one of his tenants, depriving him of both the money for his rent and the tenancy. So he was a really nasty piece of work. But his evil deeds meant that he really couldn't rest in his grave. He was never going to heaven. So he returned to the earth but as three different spectres. One of his appearances is as a large black dog, and black dogs are a thing. They are massive in folklore, particularly perhaps around Norfolk, Cambridgeshire, Suffolk, but quite well distributed elsewhere as well. So that's a common one. The most odd one is that he appeared in a carriage drawn by 4 elephants, which apparently he drove at breakneck speed along the part of the cliff top now named after him as St. Robert's Path. You must have been able to hear that from miles and miles around, I think. But as dawn broke, his ghost would appear in its 3rd incarnation as a flaming man in his bed in his old house. But although the ghost appeared to be on fire, bed blankets and everything remain untouched. So this is a kind of spontaneous spectral combustion, if you like. Now, the local townsfolk had had enough of this. I mean, it was making a racket. It was just downright weird. So they called in the local parson, Parson Bringwood, to lay the ghost. And what he did was he talked the ghost down, which effectively means, well, what does mean is you just read the Bible and prayers at the ghost until it eventually, obviously being very evil, it can't cope with that. And it's possible to put it somewhere while it's not powerful, it loses its power, to put it somewhere where it's less of a nuisance. Quite commonly, this is at the bottom of the Red Sea. If you see a lot of stories about ghosts and exorcisms in British folklore, it went to the bottom of the Red Sea. It's a little bit like 40 Days and 40 Nights. It kind of meant it went somewhere a very long way away. Some, however, say that he was dispatched to hell. So he went where he should have ended up in the first place. But others were back to the hounds again, say that in addition to riding his elephants around, he also appears accompanied by a pack of flaming hounds. What I'm interested in this is why the whole fire thing, because it seems to be significant, but it's not part of the legend, other than that one of his ghost forms is a flaming man and his hounds are flaming as well. So these are where the animals really kind of just add something to the story. Moving on now to where the animal really is the story. And this is the bit that I said was quite interesting from a folkloric point of view, because the story I'm about to tell you is from Chester in Cheshire, which is about 7 miles away from where I grew up. But the picture here illustrates it beautifully, but is actually an apparition recorded scene in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And I am fascinated, but not fascinated enough to actually put the legwork in, about how folk tales migrated, how stories went with settlers to other countries, and maybe went as they are, like this one, or that they took on a new life and a new mutation while they were there. So this is a wonderful story because it's just so balmy. St Mary's Hill is now part of Chester City Centre. It's kind of halfway between the castle and the military museum, not very far from the racecourse. So it would have been at one point pretty much on the Dee estuary before it silted up. The ghosts there is an entire herd of cows, and they're all headless, like this one, and they're all mooing. Now, how do you moo if you haven't got a head? But we'll leave that on the side for now. The story is, though, that the cows are alerting his neighbours to the death of their cowman who passed away many years ago. So they're trying to get people either to come and look after them or to come and take care of him. But the fact that that story has now appeared in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, just shows how stories can move. And in this one, we've got some additional stuff there, but it's got this greenish fire, which these cows don't have. They just don't have heads and they move. Another animal that's the clue to the whole story is the frozen chicken of Highgate, another favourite story. It was a very cold and snowy day back in April 1626, when the philosopher, statesman, scientist, and all-round polymath Sir Francis Bacon was driving through Highgate, North London, with his friend Dr. Witherbone. And the two men were in a carriage, nice and warm, and Witherbone was actually the King's doctor. So they were talking about matters medical and matters scientific. And the conversation turned, by the time they got to Highgate, to the best methods to preserve food. And Bacon said, I wonder if we could use ice to keep food fresh. So once he thought of it, he had to carry out the experiment immediately. So they stopped the carriage. And in a place now known as Pond Square, which had a pond in the middle, Bacon procured a chicken from a nearby farm. So they killed it, plucked it, gutted it, and he packed it with ice from the ground to see if it was possible to freeze the meat and preserve it. Unfortunately, he never lived to see the results of the innovative experiment. He was exposed to the freezing temperatures, got a nasty chill, was taken to the home of a friend who lived nearby, put in a damp bed, which made the chill worse, and eventually died of pneumonia on April the 9th. So not a particularly successful experience, but it's not the ghost of Francis that appears, it's the ghost of the chicken. Plucked, I don't know if it's full of ice, but apparently it's been said to flutter about Pond Square in a rather mournful fashion, which, considering what they did with the ice, is probably no great surprise. Another story with no picture, but there will be another one in a minute, is a monkey ghost at Ranton in Shropshire. Again, this probably links to earlier stories. So going back again to the end of the 19th century, 1879, a carter travelling through Ranton after dark near the canal was assailed by a big black creature with white eyes, which actually turned out to be the ghost of a giant monkey. It's thought that the ghost might be that of a man accidentally drowned in the Birmingham and Liverpool Canal, near where the carter saw the apparition, but it's not clear why the man manifests, or the ghost manifests, as a monkey. There are, however, stories that are associated with Black Dog's Tales about a shug monkey, which is a folkloric weird animal, kind of monkey-like, but not like a monkey would be if you saw one in the zoo or on TV or something, but a monkey-like creature. So whether two legends have become conflated there, the appearance of a shug monkey and the man that died in the canal, your guess is as good as mine. This is the local one for me. This is the Camberwell Palace of Varieties. This picture was painted in 1899 when it was at the height of its powers, sadly now gone. And it's a story about a lion. Now, I have a bit of a soft spot for musical. Massive fan of Marie Lloyd. Every Monday I go and sing musical songs with some like-minded people, so like musical is my thing. So an animal goes to the musical is going to go in here. So the Camberwell Palace was open from the mid-19th century and closed in the 50s. But people that went to see the performances there reported hearing immense footsteps treading softly behind them, felt a cold, rank breath on their neck, and a strong smell of rotting meat. It's a ghost of a lion, but the ghost actually commemorates the death of a lion tamer who was supposedly mauled to death on the stage in 1902 during his Animal Act. I'm not aware that the lion has been seen since the place was demolished. It closed in 1953, was demolished shortly after. But the Camberwell Palace itself is still commemorated in the locality. Orpheus Street, which sounds very romantic, but actually divides Morrison supermarket from the post office, still runs in Camberwell, and the Palace of Varieties was originally on the corner of that. I have never seen a lion there. I've been up there very late at night, but you do occasionally see some very large rats, mainly around the bins in the supermarket. So those are animals that tell the tale on their own. Animals that are there, ghostly animals that appear, but don't really have a story attached. They're just animals that appear. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. So the first one, excuse me, is Congleton in Cheshire. There's a lot of folklore around Congleton. It's known as Bear Town because of the story about the Congleton residents who sold the church Bible when their local dancing bear died to buy a new one. Actually, they didn't. What they did do is they emptied the cash box that had been set aside to buy the new Bible and used that to buy a bear instead. Now commemorated by the local brewery, Bear Town here. But this isn't about bears, this is about a cat. Near Congleton Abbey, there's a white cat that occasionally manifests, but when it goes through, when it disappears, it doesn't disappear all in one go. It does so gradually, a little at a time. So it just sort of fades out. And this reminded me of the Cheshire Cat. The cat vanished quite slowly, beginning with the end of its tail and ending with the grin, which remained some time after the rest of it had gone. Now, Lewis Carroll, of course, was in Holy Orders in Cheshire. He was a curate, I think, in Daresbury, which has windows that commemorate Alice in Wonderland. The majority of the window is your kind of regular church windows, pictures of saints and things. But along the bottom, there are little stained glass panels of the characters from Alice in Wonderland, and it's gorgeous. So it is probable, or at least highly possible, that he got the idea for the Cheshire Cat vanishing from this tale of the white cat, or the tale that vanished before the grin did. Tower of London. This is a statue of a bear, and it commemorates the time when the Tower of London was the home of the King's Menagerie. Until London Zoo opened in 1835, the majority of animals, exotic animals in London, were housed at the Tower. There was a biggish collection there. The way that the animals were treated was pretty appalling. But in 1816, so when the menagerie was still open, a yeoman warder on night duty saw a ghostly bear near the Martin Tower. And he was so scared that he fixed his bayonet and struck on it. It went straight through the bear and stuck into the door behind it. He was in such a state of shock from this that apparently he quit his post and died of shock shortly after. We do know that a polar bear, and this is the bear that the statue commemorates, was kept in the tower at some point when it did house the Royal Menagerie. So it could have been sometime between the 13th century right up until 1835, when the majority of the remaining animals transferred to Regent's Park. But that bear used to be let out to fish for its own supper in the moat of the tower. So whether it's the ghost of that bear or another bear that was kept there, we don't know. But that's the ghost for there. Back to another one, another kind of local thing for me. I work on the Isle of Dogs. It didn't used to look like that by any means. It's not an island as such, but more a bit of land that sticks out into the Thames. Since the 1980s, it's become very, it's really become the headquarters for a lot of banking and business, and it's ripped the soul out of it, I think. It kind of feels more like you're walking through a business district in America than it does in London. It just doesn't feel right. But the interesting thing here is how the area got its name. So the folklorist Steve Roud, and if you haven't come across Steve's books, read them, they are amazing. Trace the name of this area, the Isle of Dogs, back to the 16th century. It's thought that the name could refer to a former kennels being housed there, but there's no evidence to back that up. It's an educated guess. But Roud likes the story told by a woman called Jane Fulcher in Melanie McGrath's memoir, Silvertown. So the story goes that a farmer left his cow to graze on marshland near Poplar. To prevent the cow being stolen by poachers, he decided to chain 2 mastiffs to the cow's feet. So if anybody came to try and take the cow, the dogs would go for them. Unfortunately, a few days later, a mist descended and the cow couldn't see the dogs. She tripped over the chains, went headfirst into the bog and drowned, and the dogs were dragged along because they were chained to her ankles, but they were lighter, they didn't sink. It took 4 days to drown in the bog. So for 4 days, the residents of Poplar heard this unholy yowling. And by the time that the dog's owner came with their food, only their heads remained above the surface of the bog and they had drowned. But the howling that they set up was so unearthly that they kind of created their own ghost story even before they manifested as ghosts. Now, a miscellany of weird and wonderfuls. Let's go, yeah, I'll leave that up. So first of all, Brigg in Lincolnshire. Another variation possibly on the black dog stories. Sometimes black dog stories are associated with headless or not headless calves, and it's so in this case. So a headless calf haunts the causeway at Brigg, and it jumps out and forces travellers into the stream there. So they get a very big scare and a soaking. Other than the fact that cattle do graze in the area, there's no evidence of any past activity that might have caused a calf or a cow to haunt the area. But human remains were found in the area, and we've already talked about how ghosts can manifest in different ways. Like the chap that rode around on his elephant saw he was a flaming human, or so it may be that this is a human spirit that's taken the form of a calf. It could be because that this person was buried in unconsecrated ground, possibly, and that has meant that it has stayed earthbound, and it now takes its revenge by upsetting people and pushing them in the river. Kennet Longbarrow, Wiltshire. A dowsing experiment went wrong and I ran out screaming, but I won't bore you with that one today. This is a story that I think probably goes back a very, very, very long time. So the story is that near West Kennet Longbarrow, a ghostly priest visits accompanied by a white dog with red ears. Now in Celtic mythology, and we have to be careful with the term Celtic because it's a bit of a sweeping one, and probably refers to many groups of varying ethnicities, but anyway. So it's said in legend to be a Christian priest, but white dogs with red ears are associated with death, and they're associated with the wild hunt, which can be led by the devil or sometimes by Odin, which in my view is perhaps an earlier tale. If it's Odin, this could take the story back to the Anglo-Saxon period, so we're going back 1,000 years, but we don't really have the evidence to back that up. Is this priest buried in a long barrow, perhaps, which would make it back even further? We don't know, but those red-eared hounds do pop up a lot, and you get them particularly in Ireland. It's interesting that this one is in Wiltshire. This next one is an animal that isn't an animal. It also wasn't quite as big as it is in that picture. It's certainly wasn't the height of the building, but this is the very famous Black Dog of Newgate. So the story goes, again, that during the reign of Henry III, a scholar was locked up in the Newgate prison under suspicion of conjuring demons. Now, at that point, as you're probably aware, it was very common that people, if they didn't have a friend that could bring them food and blankets, if they didn't have money to purchase them, then they basically had nothing and starved to death. So food was hard to come by. And this chap perhaps wasn't as hot in a fight as some of the more hard-bitten criminals incarcerated with him. Fresh meat was hard to come by, so unfortunately the prisoners eventually, they were ravenous, they killed him and ate him. That night though, a large black dog appeared in the prison, and the prisoners thought that this was the spirit of the scholar come back, particularly given that it was groaning and crying and in great pain. They were so frightened that they killed a guard, rioted and escaped, but they felt the spirit leave with them. And in the weeks that followed, all the escaped prisoners somehow were hunted down and died mysteriously. They all died alone, nobody else witnessed the deaths, and all of them showed evidence of being mauled by a large animal. So far, so weird, but now a little bit of a debunk. So this tale was first written down by a scholar called Luke Hutton in the 16th century. So by then, it was 400 years after it allegedly happened. This illustration shows the cover of the pamphlet that Hutton produced. He was known to be a scholar of the occult. He published some weird stuff, and he quite frequently ended up in prison. Very shortly after the pamphlet was published, have I got a date? I've got 16th century, but by 1602, 1603, it had already been adapted for the theatre as The Black Dog of Newgate, parts 1 and 2. So it became a very popular story within probably 5 or 6 years at most of being written. It caught on. It's now very firmly a part of London's folklore. And reported sightings of the Black Dog continue, at least into the early part of the 20th century, and strangely increased during the 1920s. Now, again, no reason for this. It might be simply that people being more aware of the story made them misinterpret what they saw, look at shadows. But people walking alone in the area start off by sensing something before they see it. So it's a sense of something walking with them. They might see a black wolfhound-like dog. Some see something more like the picture of the witch towns I showed you earlier, menacing, red eyes, fiery eyes, terrifying. Others simply hear the sound of claws clicking, as if they're just being followed by a regular dog. Where you get stories of black dogs, sometimes the manifestation can vary according to who sees it. For example, women walking alone late at night sometimes report seeing a very friendly kind of dog that they feel is a guardian that is accompanying them until they reach home or a place of safety. Others are far more sinister, and this is quite a nasty one. Also, a large menacing shadow has been reported slipping down at the corner where the two walls of the prison meet to enclose what is now Warwick Passage, but used to be called Dead Man's Walk. So it was the passage from the prison itself to the gallows, and the dog kind of hangs out around there. Some people say that that's the hound leaving the site of the prison on his way to do his patrols to see if there's anybody else that he's missed that needs to be killed, or to seek their descendants. There we are. This is probably or possibly completely fictional, but it's one of those stories that's really running. You know, it just captured everybody's imagination. Now, a shape-shifting ghost. This is great. So another evil landowner. They're coming so much. So many of these are coming up today. So the late Squire of Bagbury, he was a bit of a swine who became a bit of a cow. When he died, the local villagers were very happy to see the back of him. He was a thoroughly unpleasant man, and nobody was going to shed any tears for him. But when he went across the Vale, he was very swiftly dispatched back to hell. There's no way he was getting into heaven. He's thoroughly bad lot. But the squire didn't like the idea of that at all, and hell just couldn't keep him there. He's like, I'm going back. If I can't go to heaven, I'm going back to Bagbury. And he returned sometime before the start of the 19th century. His ghost appears sometimes in the form of a demon, sometimes in the form of a bull, as he is here, but always with those burning, flaming red eyes. Now, the parson and the villagers were not going to put up with this. So they said, right, we're going to lay this ghost and we're going to read it down again. So again, we're seeing these themes, these tropes come back in. So they cornered the thing in the churchyard and the parson read biblical texts to it. And just the goodness of the words from the Bible caused it to shrink, shrink, shrink. And the parson was able to capture it in a snuff box, which was cast into the Red Sea. And the ghost was doomed to remain at the bottom of the Red Sea for about the next 800 years. So I reckon we've got about 600, 650 years left before we need to worry about giant marauding bovines in Bagbury. Another shapeshifter and another calf. In Alscott in Warwickshire, a ghost is very occasionally seen that has the head of a cow, or head of a calf, but the body of a man. Now, there's no legend about how this creature came to be. The story is very brief. Few people have seen it. Appearances are rare. They're not associated with a particular day or a particular time of day. So it's very kind of hard to pin down. But what I didn't really notice until I started putting this talk together is how many of these calf and cow ghosts there are. Because you always sort of think of animal ghosts as being things like black dogs, as being horses, but there's an awful lot of cows and calves going on. So we're moving away now from folklore and history into something rather more modern. You can get thousands of stories about dead animals coming home to see their owners. This is just one of them on the internet, but a very typical tale. So this is it. So our beloved golden retriever, Kelly, passed away at age 13. We also had a German shepherd. We were all sad. One day I was sitting in our den reading, the German shepherd at my feet, and heard a familiar sound coming from my son's bedroom above me. It was the thump thump of a dog scratching. So no one else was home. The dog and cat were with me. I saw the German shepherd glance up and look at me with that head tilt confusion that German shepherds are known for. The thumping stopped and the sound of an old arthritic dog walking towards the stairs. So we both got up and went to the foot of the stairs, and the German shepherd started wagging her tail in excitement. So one step creaked and the sound stopped. And I thought, okay, am I imagining this? But if I'm imagining this, the dog's seeing it as well, or the dog's hearing it as well. So over the next few weeks, everybody else in the family heard the sound at different times. We were gifted a golden retriever puppy, and the German shepherd and the whole family were happy to have a new puppy. When she got to around 7-8 months, she was sleeping at the top of the stairs, and I was downstairs folding laundry, and my husband was in another room off the landing working. All of a sudden, the new pup was on her feet, staring into my son's room, the room where the old dog used to sleep, and gave an impressive growl, hackles erect. After about 15 seconds, she stopped and started wagging her tail. After that, we never heard the thumping or paw steps again. I think new dog saw old dog, and it's my belief that the old dog spirit hung around to be sure we're all doing well and to see that the new puppy was doing his job properly. But after all these years, we still have little dog-shaped holes in our hearts from our departed friends. So as an animal that comes home, and there's nothing, unlike almost all the other stories I've told you, there's nothing malevolent or evil or even particularly scary about this. And I can see that an owner could find that really comforting. Not all ghost stories about dogs and animals are so comforting and feel good. This is from the Daily Express on the 6th of April 1966. A council house has been standing empty since a family of 4 fled from it in terror. Several families asked if they could move in, but Swindon Council in Wiltshire has repeatedly said no. The house in Penhill Drive, Swindon, is haunted, says the council. It has asked the clergyman to exorcise the house before it can be occupied. The family who fled were given a new house by the council. They complain that they saw apparitions of animals, that objects moved by themselves, that one of the children was pinned to a wall by nothing. The house had previously been occupied by Mrs. Anne Riley, who was a spiritualist, who then moved from Penshill Drive to Wheeler Avenue, also in Swindon. She said that the happenings of Penhill Drive could have been caused by my 2 dead pets, an Alsatian and a cat. Both pets died while I was living here. I was fond of them both, and I did see them there after their deaths, walking about the house. So if that is the case, why did the animals, obviously a comforting present to Mrs. Riley, but they scared the heck out of the family that moved in afterwards? Maybe they resented the fact that she'd gone. Maybe they thought these were strangers in the house and they were doing their job as guards and chased them out. I don't know. So after that collection of stories, a few thoughts to close with. If, as some people believe, ghosts are spirits of the dead returning to Earth, does that mean that animals also have souls or spirits or some other kind of essence that remains behind? Does that mean we'll be reunited with our pets in the afterlife? If I would like to be reunited with my hamster, but if she keeps me awake like she did when she was alive, maybe not. Are animal ghosts conscious that they are ghosts? Do they just think that they're doing what they've always done, going up and down stairs or whatever? Adding to this, when I was putting this talk together, CJ posted a story on the ASSAP Facebook group about a spiritualist who claimed to see the spirit of a hamster leave its body and fly away when the hamster died. If that sounds funny, then ask yourself why that's funny. We have souls. Why doesn't a hamster have one? Also, if a human is condemned to remain on Earth post-mortem, why do they have animal companions? Now, for me, that question is in the same category as why do ghosts wear clothes? Because, you know, they may appear wearing clothes that they were not wearing when they were buried. So, if these animals are effectively an accessory, are they real? Or is it sort of part of a bigger image projected in some way? Or was the owner particularly attached to the animal or animals? But many of these stories are about people who are accused of extreme cruelty, and it's hard to imagine that they'd be affectionate about their animals. Maybe they got on better with the animals, or maybe their last evil act was keeping their animal companions on Earth with them for eternity, which is a pretty evil thing to do. The thing to take from this, I think, is that folklore is fluid. Things change. Ghosts can be characters in legends, fiction can become folklore or fake lore. It may be that the Black Dog of Newgate began as fiction, for example. People claim to see ghosts that are fictional, and people do claim to see the Black Dog. Is it that we are programmed in a way to identify phenomena according to the stories we know? So if we see a big black shadow near Newgate Prison, is it Black Dog? Or less likely, does this belief from so many people generate a ghostly thought form? One final thought. I can understand why human ghosts might be headless. You know, let's go back to Anne Boleyn again. We know why she's headless. But why are the horses and cows headless? I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
a moment. Oh, saw an indent of ghost dog lying on bed and heard a ghost cat munching biscuits. Heard a ghost horse and carriage cantering up to the side of a church ruins. Weird story. When I worked for Most Haunted, we were down at Woodchester Mansion, and they paid me and Andy Oakley, who's a complete skeptic. Some of you might know Andrew, and a bunch of other people, including Lisa, my housemate. We went there and we were the overnighters. We stayed in the ruins overnight with a bunch of spiritualists called the Bassett Law Research Group. And they told me that an orb was a ghost fetus. It was the first sign of a ghostly manifestation, which caused some hilarity amongst the skeptics in my party. But anyway, there's a 19th century romantic story about a murdered rider who dies there. And I didn't take it seriously. I assumed it was made up by a vicar, as vicars often made up fake lore in the 19th century. And while I was sitting outside the tent, I heard a horse approach. And yes, there were cows in the field next to me, but I could see them. And the horse was coming down the gravel. So expecting some attractive young lady riding along, my experience of growing up surrounded by, it was always attractive young ladies who came riding past. So I kind of wandered out of the tent, made myself look presentable and walked down. And the horse was slowing down. It went from gallop, canter, trot, walk. And you know how a horse changes gear as it comes in to stop. And there wasn't a horse. And there were no horses anywhere. So I was really surprised by that, because I'd heard a ghost that I had previously assumed was fictional. And I still don't really know what happened on that day. Anyway.
Do you know when they put the gravel drive down?
No idea at all. I could probably find out, because one of the former secretaries of ASSAP spent years working there as a historian. I'm assuming, I don't know, because my father put gravel down on our drive, which was 3/4 of a mile up to the farm, and that was like, but it would have been, I assume it might have been as early as the 30s. But I mean, even main roads weren't actually always that well maintained until quite recently, were they?
Yeah, I'm just thinking if you can actually hear the hooves on the gravel.
Yeah.
Know?
But there's all kinds of. Anyway, I think I'm getting ill. Julie Elizabeth B. I can't read the whole name. Hang on. Boyd. I've heard a ghost course neigh at Wycliffe Hall's grounds, and I thought I saw my deceased dog on my bed, but that could have been a vivid green. There are so many of these stories. We've all had these experiences. Jackie Tonks, Carolyn McKen, Kieran, Patricia saw a ghost cat. It's Carol's seen Azrael. We're gonna have to go through these. I saw a phantom dog with a sailor. Oh, I'd never knew that, Ed. Well, we'll come back to people's ghost stories afterwards, because I'm going to actually ask the questions first of all.
Okay.
A phantom horse ridden up a haunted staircase. Yeah, where is that? Which hall is it?
Oh God.
Ed will know.
Ed does know. It's I think it's Wolverton Hall or something. It's in Dorset.
Okay.
Oh, okay. It's Wolverton Hall. Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Is that another Elliot O'Donnell one?
I don't know, but it's Wolverton House. Sorry, I do.
I think it might actually be the case, as Caroline says, in more than one story, more than one. I've heard it somewhere as well. It's the notion of, the villain who comes riding in and rides up.
I think he did it for a bet in this case. It was a bet. It was a bet. Apparently, it was. He bet he could ride a horse and carriage up the stairs for a lot of money, and did it. Apparently, hey, we do it in style if you're going to win a bet.
I have heard about Steynie Castle in Scotland used to have a ghost horse there as well.
Ah, excellent. Okay, well, yeah, as Paul pointed out, stories migrate. Francis Bacon invented refrigeration. He became frozen bacon.
Please.
It's an Ed joke.
I'm interested by the comments somebody just put up about Haunted Slaughterhouse, because I'm sort of thinking, why aren't more of them?
Yeah, the abattoir aspect.
Yeah, because there must be areas of sort of high anxiety and stuff for animals. So,
Ghost Canal Monkey makes me think of one of the classic Edwardian ghost stories where the house is by the river and they keep finding spots of green slime. And the green monkey thing is drowning the children. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, it's a classic Edwardian story. There was a red monkey at Colebrook in Devon. It used to attack passers-by. The ghost bear. Oh, Lewis Carroll's father was the vicar at Daresbury, where Lewis was born, according to Robert Gandy. The county of Cheshire is very much shaped like a smile, the historic county. Black dog goes to Ivelet Bridge and I can't say that, Swaledale, Yorkshire. Theo Brown mentions the ghost of a headless goat near Sherwell. Someone visiting Hampton Court and seeing dead farm animals in the kitchens. Oh, this is a good one. My friend's father was halted around midnight on a country lane in County Tipperary by a glowing white turkey cock. It circled him 3 times and promptly disappeared. Now that is a proper haunting of the traditional witchcraft story. The circling and the fact it's an omen. It's like it's a family omen, isn't it, normally? He was a very down-to-earth man and felt shocked by the experience, convinced something very strange had occurred. Well, absolutely. That is extraordinarily weird. A ghost wolf in Kent. Now that we need to hear about in a minute as well. Got a JPEG here. I'll just download it. I'm just running through the questions very quickly because I'm feeling very dodgy. Sorry for myself tonight. I think I'm going down with a cough or something. Becky had one all over Christmas and New Year, and I've got to get better because I've got.
Thank you.
Oh,
not you.
Oh yeah, Amelia was writing about ghosts, animal ghosts, and we need her to actually come and talk to us. She's been doing this for ages. I can't actually see the photo, but if you can download it, hang on. Cannot unknown file format. I can't open it. So I'm going to ask Amelia to actually speak in a moment if she's able to, or to put the details in here. We advertised a couple of years ago when we did the very first webinars that she was recording animal stories, and as everyone's got them, this is something we really need to do. The Gert dog was used to protect travellers on the Quantock Hills. The Gert dog of Langport, isn't it? Or is that just the one that was based on the Somerset Zodiac? Has anyone else read Catherine?
Gert dog of Langport was not on the Quantocks. No, that's the Somerset Zodiac. That is.
Yeah, it's Maltwood, Catherine Maltwood's book. I don't know how many people. I might do a talk on that one day because it's something I'm very fond of. The ghost of a man with a calf's head who was a cow herder killed by a herd of cows in Devon. There's a Belly or Beal sheephead who is a Cumbrian haunting that is said to be a half woman, half sheep, or half man, half sheep. My dad had a boss who was George String. He didn't like his first G String. Yeah. Oh dear. My aunt went to school with a lad cursed with the name Wayne Anchor. Yeah, that is unfortunate. I had a friend who was called Penniston, Andrew Penniston, and his driving license, which uses the initial and the first 5 letters, was truly unfortunate because he had to use it as ID quite often. Karen said she used to work there. Okay, yeah. Michael, yeah. Michael Hazelnut. Dwayne Pipe. Oh no, why would anyone call their child Dwayne Pipe? That's horrible. Oh, okay. Jackie has the ghost of a slaughterhouse. Ozark folklore mentions a haunted slaughterhouse in the Appalachians. Deceased dog. I won't tell my dog joke again. Headless soldier who turned off the country road to the churchyard and disappeared. Very, very classic Irish ghosts. Amelia's email is here, and we need to put it into the Facebook group tonight. If anyone's got a story they can share with her. Amelia, would you be willing to speak now? Are you able to? I don't know if she can or not. I'm assuming she's in Finland, but that is just a guess by the name. Is anyone's finish better than mine? Probably. I think anyone's finish is better than mine. I'm like level 3 on Duolingo, which doesn't get you far. Okay, well, Amelia is looking for people. She's got excellent English anyway, to help with her research for ghost animals. Please do contact her. You can message her directly by typing down below. You can change the name of who you're writing to. Everyone in meeting I've got at the moment, and then you can do it. There was a pianist in the 1970s called Wayne King. Okay, enough stupid names. Let's go back to people who've had some ghostly experiences. We've got 13 minutes left. Who would like to share their experience with the ghost? I'm going to hand back to Paula because she can chair this bit.
Okay, great.
So unmute yourself, Paula. Go for it.
I am unmuted. So are we talking about general ghosts or particularly animal ghosts?
Animal ghosts tonight, please.
Animal ghosts. So what was very obvious from what you were saying, what people were saying, what's coming through in the chat, is so many people reporting quite innocent kind of animal ghosts, you know, things like a returned dog, a returned cat. And it's kind of strange that the ones that people tend to report in the modern day are often very comforting, whereas with the ones that we go, if we go back in folklore and legend, you know, they've got flaming eyes and red eyes and big claws and things. I wonder if it has something to do with the way that we see animals, because we tend to see them more now as companions, perhaps. And we don't have that fear of, you know, don't go into the woods. I don't know, just a thought. Do we have any animal stories, spooky ones? DJ, you're muted.
One suggestion I've heard many times is that animals who are associated with hauntings are the ones who humans perceive. So that we don't see dead dinosaurs or dead cows or dead chickens very often is because they are not part of our culture, and therefore we do not. And if you're going to go for the telepathic theory of ghosts, it makes perfect sense. But animals who love us and whom we have strong relationships with are very likely to manifest indeed. I think that experience of when you suffer a bereavement is why I'm so frustrated that Marmalade has made no effort to contact me at all, because he's such a little, you know, you would have thought he would have made some effort to come back and bother us. But also, it was the same with my parents. They knew full well that Becky did her PhD on ghosts. They knew that I was a ghost researcher. They found it ridiculous, and neither of them have bothered to haunt me, which I find deeply distressing. So you would have thought they could have at least manifested. Yeah, I mean, it might have been annoying. They were many times annoying in life, but a single phone call would have been good. But anyway, yeah, if you've got an experience with an animal ghost, please talk to Paula now. Thank you. Go on, Paula.
What?
Ask people to tell their stories.
Yeah. Okay. So, spooky animal stories, welcome, please. I think we may have. Now, that's an interesting thing. Somebody just said that the stories of the monkey ghosts reminded them of accounts of hominids. And that's an interesting one, because a lot of these stories were reported before we had a kind of theory of human evolution. So I guess I'm just wondering whether we could kind of go further than that and tie these monkey ghosts in with things like Bigfoot, kind of go into the realms of cryptozoology. Also, I'm wondering if in the 17th century, people really knew what monkeys looked like, unless they lived near seaports and people had them as pets and stuff. You were out in perhaps a more remote part of the countryside. You might say it looked like a monkey, but you might only have a vague notion of what a monkey actually looked like.
Yeah, I'll tell you about this because this recent one of the monkeys seen near the canal bridge. So the original one was attacked on the coach by it, and it was a recent thing. I saw it in the Canal and River Trust magazine. So I live on a canal bank. You have to excuse me, I've got a very hormonal parrot on my shoulders making weird noises. But
Right.
I think a bit like a strange animal ghost at the moment, but I think it's possessed as well. Anyway, this guy was on a canal boat. I think it was a couple of 2-3 years ago, I think, and he was going along with his family near that bridge, and he shouts to his family, "Come and look at this weird monkey! Come and look at the weird monkey!" And he described it, I think, looking like a really weird chimpanzee type thing, running along the side of the boat. And he shouts his family up, and they could not see it. And he said it was right in front of them, and his wife and his children could not see it, and they start taking the piss out of him, and he's going, "It's right in front of you, you can see it." And he was so distressed, he supposedly contacted the Canal and River Trust. He had no idea about this legend, and recounted it to them, and then they told him about the legend, but he was quite distressed by it. So
wow. Had he seen ghosts before, did you say?
no, I don't think it didn't really go into detail, but it just gave a brief account in the Canal and River Trust magazine. So that's quite interesting. He didn't know anything about the legend, supposedly, when he contacted them. Yeah.
So this is really recent.
I think it was about 3-4 years ago. Yeah, to get the exact date, but yeah. So it's obviously still active, and yeah.
Great, thanks. Any more?
I don't have a story of an animal ghost, but I do have a story of an animal that seemed to be able to see a ghost. In the days when I was an investigator, the most dramatic case I ever had to investigate concerned a school in South Yorkshire, in particular the caretaker's flat attached to it. And while we were there, I and a fellow investigator carrying out the usual interview of the family, the caretaker, his wife, and their grown-up son. At one point during the interview, their West Highland Terrier went and stood near the corner of the room looking into it, as if it could see something the rest of us couldn't. Its hair stood on end and its left ear started bleeding. And the caretaker's wife got distressed and she said, "Oh, this keeps happening." On another occasion at the same school, caretaker's flat again, we were about to do an overnight vigil. And just as we were setting up in the bedrooms, we had a call from the lounge where the caretaker and his wife were about to go to sleep. And again, the dog was doing this, staring into the corner with its left ear bleeding that we couldn't see. So there does seem to be some evidence that animals can see ghosts or spirits that most people can't see.
I've got a real bit of a weird one here, which is that my family home was haunted by poltergeist and poltergeist activity. So what happened was this poltergeist would manifest and he would cause various trouble. I know the name. I've got a fairly thick file on him, so, real person. And there was one of our cats, called Rose in particular. She was took a special fancy to me. And she saw this ghostly figure sort of threatening me. And she launched herself off a table and then sort of with the object presumably of attacking the ghost, and screeched and screamed when she went straight through the ghost and crashed onto a bookcase. So there you go. I've mentioned this a couple of times in various groups, in the sense of the existence of ghosts and poltergeists. Did the cat see or observe something that some of us humans don't, or at least I did, and other family members also did, but there was no substance to the being that was seen, as the cat went straight through it. So there you go.
We seem to be getting a lot of cats. From the stories I found, a lot of horses, but I know what CJ said, that certain animals perhaps are more associated with us as companion animals, but anybody know about anything like a ghost mouse or a...
There is a story which we had a bit of fun with at Weird Weekend North a few years ago, about the ghost rabbit of Crank. Crank is a village in north of Warrington, and it's a story whereby an old woman was she had a pet rabbit, and reputed to have money, that sort of thing. Gets attacked by two vicious young lads, who, while they beat her to death, they then also beat the rabbit to death. And later on, a few weeks later or something like that, then they find one of them's being chased by the ghost of the rabbit, which chases him over a cliff or something like that, and he ends up dead, and similar to the other one. It's one of those local legends, which probably has no basis in fact at all, but it's a good story.
But it's another story where the animal is kind of the story. Yeah.
And of course, there's the well-known case of the talking mongoose and the Isle of Man, which, having read all about it, I conclude, as did one author, that it was probably a tulpa.
Yeah. I almost put Jeff the mongoose in this, but I think he's been discussed at length so often that I thought I'd leave him out. Plus, he would need a very large amount of talk just for him. But I love Jeff the mongoose. He was one of my first kind of things that got me into weird stuff. I read about him when I was about 7 or 8, was scared silly, and I've adored him ever since.
Yeah, went out with Lapis to research him last year, and we're going out again this year, and our conclusion was it was probably a tulpa family with their imagination and just feeding it. And then, yeah, that was our conclusion as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're about on time at 8:30. So is there anything else, or should we close proceedings for the evening?
I just made a point earlier in the chat, which I think CJ skipped past, just to say, you made the point in your presentation, which was excellent, by the way, about stories migrating across the United States. And I just wondered if it might be worth contacting Jan Brunvand, who wrote The Vanishing Hitchhiker and knows all about the various urban legends and traces stories like that back, him and his colleagues. Will it be worth contacting him? He's retired now, long retired, but I do have contact with him because The Vanishing Hitchhiker, he believes it's all urban legend, so he finds it quite amusing that I send him stories about real ones.
I love his books. I've read probably 6 or 7 of them. He's great.
Yeah.
I think I'd almost be a bit too scared to talk to him, actually, because he just seems so knowledgeable. But
he's a really nice guy, and he goes doing lots of skiing in the winter and fly fishing in the summer now.
Well, how old is he? He must be quite old, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I think he's probably about 80. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
But if you have any query, question that you want asking, I could always forward it to him if that was what you wanted.
That'd be amazing. What I'd love to do, but if not happen this side of retirement, is to actually do a kind of mapping exercise with looking at stories and where they are in time and also in geography, and seeing if they tie in with migration patterns to other countries. But it just seems like a very, very, very big project.
Yeah, but that's why I was suggesting.
Yeah.
Because if you read his book, you'll see he and his team track back urban legends.
Yeah.
To what they see as being the original source, or it wasn't. This urban legend didn't appear anywhere before 1978 or something like that. So if you wanted me to forward a query, then I'll be happy to do that.
That would be amazing. Thank you very much. I can PM you on Facebook?
No, because I'm not on Facebook. I don't do social media.
Okay.
But CJ, I'll give you my email address.
Thank you. That's really kind. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for your attention. And it was really nice to speak to you. And take care and have a lovely rest of your evening. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I was
yeah.
unmuted. Sorry, I was trying to come back, but I had.
Oh, right. I thought you might have gone because I know you said you were feeling a bit poorly.
As I say, I've got 2 weeks until contingency in Hunstanton. It's a great role-playing games convention. Paula's books are available from Pelgrane Press, which is a gaming and role-playing game company which Becky works for and which I sometimes do stuff with. And if any of you want to come gaming with us, do give us a shout. If you've got any problems, always feel free to drop me a line at chair@assap.ac.uk and I will respond as soon as I see your email. And hopefully we'll be back to normal next week. Next week, who is next week? Kieran, do you know? Does anyone know who's next week? Because
I don't know. I thought you.
Hang on a minute.
Patricia, nice to see you. You made it. I'm glad I got your email earlier saying you hadn't got the link. I'm sorry the link went out late. Becky's been very unwell. So, hi, Michael. Looks like you're in tropical paradise there, which is certainly more than I am here. Right, I'll see if and Bill will tell us who's next.
It's Richard Felix.
Oh, right, great.
Great. I haven't seen Richard for years since we used to work together, so that'll be great. Okay, well, hopefully we'll still have Rich. I'll try and find out if he's still up for it. Fantastic. If not, I think Steve Parsons wanted to do something, so we will sort that out. But anyway, Richard Felix next week. God bless. Keep safe. Hope everyone's well. And next time you see me, I won't be experimenting with trying to fix my razors using pyramid power, with the result that I won't look like an extra from Planet of the Apes. Have a good night. Take care, everyone. Good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.